Do you believe in magic? Not the kind that comes from wands or spells, but the magic that comes from hope, imagination, and never giving up, even when life seems impossible. This is the story of a woman who went from being a struggling single mother with almost nothing, to becoming one of the most successful authors in history, the creator of The Boy Who Lived, Harry Potter. This is the story of J.K. Rowling, the woman who turned her dreams into a world of magic. Joanne Kathleen Rowling was born on July 31, 1965, in Yate, a small town in England. Her father, Peter, worked as an engineer at Rolls-Royce, and her mother, Anne, was a science technician. Joanne, or Jo as her family called her, grew up alongside her younger sister, Diane, in a simple home filled with love, imagination, and books. From a very young age, Jo loved to read. Her parents often read to her, and she quickly fell in love with stories, especially those full of fantasy and adventure. She admired classic children's authors like C.S. Lewis, whose Chronicles of Narnia opened her eyes to the magic of storytelling. At the age of 6, she wrote her very first story. It was about a rabbit named Rabbit. Even as a child, she enjoyed creating characters, giving them life through her words. When she turned 11, she wrote her first novel, a story about 7 cursed diamonds and the people who owned them. Writing was her escape, her way of expressing herself, and she knew deep inside that she wanted to be an author someday. Rowling attended St. Michael's Primary School, where her teachers quickly noticed her love for storytelling. Later, she studied at Wyddean School, where she met an English teacher named Lucy Shepherd, who encouraged her writing. But even though she loved English literature, her teenage years were not easy. She described herself as shy and insecure, often escaping into the worlds she created in her mind. After finishing high school, Joanne went to the University of Exeter, where she studied French and classics. She spent a year in Paris as part of her degree, learning about languages and ancient myths. Those myths and stories of heroes would later inspire many magical details in the Harry Potter books. Even though she studied languages, her heart always belonged to storytelling. She often said that she was happiest when she was alone in a quiet room, writing stories that only she could see. In 1990, Joanne's life was about to change forever. She was working in London, traveling back home from Manchester one evening. The train was delayed for hours, but instead of feeling bored, she found herself lost in thought. It was during that long train ride that the idea of a boy wizard suddenly appeared in her mind. She didn't know where it came from, it just appeared. A young boy who didn't know he was a wizard, who discovers his magical heritage and goes to a school for witchcraft and wizardry. She later said, "I saw Harry very clearly. He was a skinny, black-haired boy who didn't know he was a wizard." Joanne didn't have a pen with her that day, so she had to imagine everything in her mind, the characters, the castle, the spells, even the golden snitch. That train ride became the beginning of a legend. After that magical train journey, Joanne's life took a heartbreaking turn. Her mother, Anne, passed away after battling multiple sclerosis for years. Her death deeply affected Joanne, who was only 25 at the time. Her grief poured into her writing. The themes of loss and love that appear throughout the Harry Potter series, especially Harry's longing for his parents, were inspired by that personal pain. Joanne once said that her mother's death is the single biggest influence on her writing. A few years later, she decided to move to Portugal to teach English. There, she met a Portuguese journalist named Jorge Arantes. They got married and had a daughter, Jessica. But their marriage was short-lived and unhappy. In 1993, Joanne made a difficult decision. She left her husband and moved to Scotland with her baby daughter, carrying nothing but a suitcase full of clothes and the first 3 chapters of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. She was 28 years old, with no job, no money, and a child to care for. Life was hard, and there were moments when she felt like giving up. She described herself at that time as the biggest failure I knew. But even in her darkest moments, she held on to one thing, her story. In Edinburgh, Rowling stayed close to her sister Diane. She trained as a French teacher and began teaching part-time, but she continued to write whenever she could. She didn't have a proper workspace, so she often wrote in small cafés across the city, places like Nicholson's Cafe and the Elephant House. She would sit by the window, pushing her baby's pram back and forth with one hand while writing with the other. People often thought she was just daydreaming, but she was building a magical world, one that would soon capture the hearts of millions. She spent 5 long years writing and rewriting Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. She poured all her imagination, her hope, and her pain into those pages. When she finally finished it, she sent the first 3 chapters to literary agents. Most of them rejected her. One agent, Christopher Little, saw potential and agreed to represent her. But even then, publishers turned her down again and again. 12 publishers rejected Harry Potter. But Rowling didn't stop believing. She waited patiently for her chance. And finally, one small publisher named Bloomsbury decided to give her a chance. The chairman's 8-year-old daughter read the first chapter and immediately asked for more, and that simple reaction changed everything. In June 1997, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was published under the name J.K. Rowling. The publisher suggested she use initials instead of her full name, believing boys might not want to read a book written by a woman. She chose the initial, K, to honor her grandmother, Kathleen. The first print run was only 500 copies, and yet, those few books marked the beginning of a global phenomenon. The story of the boy who lived spread like wildfire. Children and adults alike fell in love with the magic of Hogwarts, the friendships, the courage, and the power of love. A year later, the book was released in the US under a new title, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. It became an instant bestseller. Awards poured in, and Rowling's life began to transform. But success didn't stop her from writing. She continued the series, one book after another, each one growing darker, deeper, and more emotional. The world watched as Harry, Hermione, and Ron grew up. Each book release became a global event. Fans lined up outside bookstores at midnight just to get their hands on the next chapter of the story. The 7 books were translated into more than 85 languages, selling over 500 million copies. They were adapted into 8 blockbuster movies that made J.K. Rowling a household name. But beyond fame and money, what mattered most to her was the connection her books made with readers. Children who once hated reading now found joy in her words. Adults found comfort and nostalgia in the lessons of bravery and love. Harry Potter wasn't just a story, it was a world of hope. In 2007, Rowling finished writing the final book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, in a hotel room at the Balmoral Hotel in Edinburgh. She even left a note on a marble bust in the room that read, J.K. Rowling finished writing Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows in this room 552 on the 11th of January 2007. After 17 years of living with Harry Potter in her imagination, it was time to say goodbye. But Rowling didn't stop writing. In 2012, she released her first adult novel, The Casual Vacancy. It explored the darker, more realistic sides of human life. Though different from Harry Potter, it showed her range as a writer. The book was later turned into a TV series. Then, she surprised everyone again by publishing a detective novel under the fake name Robert Galbraith. The book, The Cuckoo's Calling, received positive reviews, until her secret identity was revealed. The Galbraith novels, following private detective Cormoran Strike, became another successful series, proving that Rowling's storytelling power wasn't limited to magic. Even after finishing the Harry Potter books, Rowling couldn't completely leave the wizarding world. In 2016, she worked with playwright Jack Thorne and director John Tiffany to create Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, a stage play that continues Harry's story as an adult and father. The play premiered in London's West End and later expanded worldwide. It won multiple awards and was loved by fans. Around the same time, Rowling began working as a screenwriter for the Fantastic Beasts movie series, prequels set before the events of Harry Potter. These films, including The Crimes of Grindelwald and The Secrets of Dumbledore, allowed her to explore the wizarding world from a new perspective. Beyond writing, Rowling has dedicated much of her life to charity. She created the Volant Charitable Trust to support women, children, and families in need. She also founded Lumos, an international children's charity that helps kids living in orphanages find safe, loving homes. She has also supported medical research in memory of her mother, who passed away from multiple sclerosis. The Anne Rowling Regenerative Neurology Clinic in Edinburgh was named in her honor. For Rowling, kindness and compassion are as important as imagination. Her success gave her a platform, but she has always used it to help others. During the 2020 pandemic, Rowling released The Ichabod, a fairy tale she had written years earlier. She published it online for free to entertain children stuck at home. Kids around the world sent in illustrations, and when the book was finally published, their artwork was included. All proceeds went to charity. In 2021, she released another children's book, The Christmas Pig, a story about love, friendship, and courage. Even decades after Harry Potter, Rowling continues to inspire readers with her words and her imagination. J.K. Rowling's journey is one of resilience, faith, and creativity. She faced rejection, poverty, heartbreak, and criticism, but never stopped writing. She once said, It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all. From a single mother in a cafe to a billionaire author, her life proves that dreams can come true, if you dare to believe in them. Today, J.K. Rowling lives in Scotland with her husband, Neil Murray, and their children. She continues to write under both her own name and her pseudonym Robert Galbraith. And though she has achieved incredible fame, she often says that her happiest moments are still when she's alone in her writing room, creating stories. J.K. Rowling didn't just write books, she built a universe. Her stories taught generations about courage, friendship, and the power of love. And perhaps the greatest magic of all is that her own story, of failure, hope, and triumph, inspires millions around the world to believe in their own. From a delayed train to a global legacy, J.K. Rowling's story reminds us that no dream is too small and no struggle too big. Because sometimes, the greatest magic is not found in wands or spells, but in believing in yourself. If you enjoyed this story of J.K. Rowling's incredible journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring biographies.